Joni, we wanted to kind of just gather around with you today. You're a TV personality all over the world. You know, you're known for bringing news to the world, making people aware of issues that they need to know that can make their life a better life. You've been amazing at that through the years. And we know there's stuff out there circulating and accusations that are coming from people that don't even know who you are, don't know you. And we, as your friends sitting here today, we have worked with you every day for years. We know you better than anybody out there that feels like they have the right to do what they're doing. So the girls and I, we just wanted to sit with you today, and we wanted to ask you some of those questions that people are wanting answers. And so we just wanted to have our coffee and just ask you those questions.
Okay.
Okay. All right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, like Cindy said, there are those allegations out there from people who really don't know much about what's going on. One of the questions is, when did you hear about the alleged abuse?
My first knowledge of any abuse was in November of 2020. And Susie called me and said there had been an incident at my granddaughter's preschool. And she told me that something had happened where a little boy touched her and her friend. And so she called me and asked me, would I go to the school with her? And I said, absolutely. So I went with her to the school. We reported it to the school. And of course, you know, I was there to encourage, and as I would for any child, but especially my granddaughter.
Of course, yes.
And so that was the incident that happened. And yet, you know, what's being written is just taken out of context. That was the incident that happened in 2020, and I was there. And Susie actually called me to go there.
Okay, so the word about you covering up, there's no truth to that.
You know, when I started hearing that, I thought to myself, what am I covering up? I've covered up nothing.
Right.
And so I never covered up anything. Now, there was another incident written about that was an incident that happened at our family retreat. This was in 2021. Okay. We were all staying in this house together, and again, we do that once a year. And my two older grandchildren were staying in an upstairs bedroom, and it was a long room, and there was a bunk bed on one side, and there was another bunk bed on the other side. And so my grandson was talking about that he had the city view, and he was saying his sister had the beach view.
Okay.
And so one afternoon, he was talking about that, and who they call Pete was in the room holding a 1-year-old baby boy, okay? And so Pete says, oh, so you've got the city view, and everybody was talking about, well, I'd rather have the beach view, and my grandson saying, no, I like the city view. And Pete said, well, I like the city view too. And so he said, I want to see your city view. So they went up the stairs.
The grandson and Pete, and Pete had the baby.
The grandson, Pete, and the baby.
Okay.
Now, all those details have been left out.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they went up the steps, and again, I was there. I heard this whole conversation. And around the same time, or maybe just a few minutes after, I don't know exactly when, but my granddaughter went up to the room and went over to her side while Pete and the baby and my grandson were looking out the window at the city view.
Okay.
And she proceeded to put her bathing suit on. Well, about the time she started to put it on, Jonathan comes running up the stairs.
Her dad.
And says, what are you doing in here while she's changing? You know, what are you doing? You know, and Pete was like, well, I'm sorry. I don't even know if he actually saw anything.
Because he had his back to her.
Because he was holding the baby and the 8-year-old was there. So he said, you know, I'm so sorry, and left. But there had been some very peculiar things that have happened at this particular trip. I remember when we were at the a grocery store. All the family was there because when we go, we always go to the grocery store and get food for
Yeah.
breakfast and that kind of thing. And I remember Susie was standing in line and she began to murmur under her breath and start talking about a man that was behind her. And she was getting angrier and angrier, and we were like, what, what's going on? And she, she said, he was looking at me, in the store. And the man is like on his phone, not knowing what in the world she's saying or doing. We were just trying to calm her down. So it was just a weird dynamic that was going on with her from the beginning.
Right.
I know that
Well-
when you called me from Florida and told me that it was a tough time
Yeah.
as a family. And I know that when families get together like that, a lot of times there are
Yeah.
times
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
disagree about things or things happen.
Well,
But
I mean,
know it's
and
very
what happened was
tough.
Marcus was alive, and so we just met together as a family. He talked to everyone, and clearly nothing happened.
Yeah.
Speaking of Pastor Marcus, first I want to say thanks for the opportunity. You've always been easy to talk to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just
Very transparent.
very transparent. And so I want to ask you because Susie said that you and Pastor Marcus covered it up. Did you cover it up?
Marcus isn't here, but I will just say absolutely a lie. I never covered up anything. I wouldn't cover up anything. Marcus didn't cover up anything. And so, again, this is a narrative that was written by some low-level blogger who knows nothing, never heard the other side of the story,
Yeah.
and is doing nothing but trying to destroy my family.
Sensationalize.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what she does.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I'm glad you shared this because I don't know why somebody would not have asked that question. Was there anybody else in the bedroom
Right.
besides
All of that was left out.
all of it?
Holding a
And
baby,
That was, and that
an
would have been to
8-year-old.
me.
Yes.
If you're investigating something or you're going to try
You'd
to
want
find
the
something,
facts.
Right.
well, it's a family retreat. So
Right.
Well, the crazy part is that eventually we worked through that misunderstanding, and Jonathan and Susie ended up apologizing, and we prayed together. I mean, and it was a done deal.
Right.
And so the timing of later this coming out or being pulled up again out of the ashes when there's no validity to it just blew my mind. I'm like, what in the world?
Well, but did you
absolutely.
continue to do things as a family with Jonathan
yeah.
and Susie and their family?
Oh, absolutely. Now, this is the thing. So this was 2021, and Marcus passed away and was graduated to heaven in November of 2021. So when 2022 rolled around, the question was, are we going to do our family retreat? When the kids asked me about it, I said, I just don't know if I'm up for it, guys. And so, but we all got together and they just said, no, Mom, we really want to do this. So I said yes. We went, Jonathan, Susie, their kids, and the other couple, their kid. And when we got to the house, everybody will pick their room, and there were bunk beds that were outside Pete's room, and Jonathan and Susie say, "Oh, well, the kids can sleep here." So there was no thought of anything
problem, yes.
that there would be any issue, and Pete actually came to me and said, this is uncomfortable for me
Because of what happened.
because he
last
didn't
year.
want that to be repeated.
Yes.
Exactly.
And so I said, well, no, we don't need to put the kids here. So I put them on the same floor with their parents. Everything was great. Nothing happened. And again, you think this issue is settled. That's what happened.
Yeah, wow.
And this is all after the fact, after the incident. So,
Yeah, the one incident that happened was 2020 with her preschool.
Yeah.
And somehow it has evolved into blaming a family member. Because, people say, well, how can you protect a family member over? I would never protect anyone
No,
over my
you would
granddaughter.
not.
That's
You would
not who
not.
you are.
I mean, that is insane, for people to say, oh, she's so terrible. I would never put the ministry before family. I never have done that.
You and Marcus never did. And
So those are just misconceptions, again, by the low-level blogger who does nothing but be used in a way that is trying to hurt the kingdom of God. I mean, if you want to know the
Yes,
truth.
Yeah.
absolutely. We know who the enemy is.
Yeah, and one of the other issues that's out there among debate is the marriage between you and Doug after Marcus passed away.
Right.
As I understand, Jonathan and Susie said they struggled with that. But I remember when initially the dating and the engagement, they were especially Susie was very excited.
Oh, very excited.
About,
From the very beginning.
and wanted
Yeah.
pictures. Was it so excited?
I
And
mean, I have so many texts of her being excited, and early on, when I found out Doug had gone through a divorce, after that, I need to make that clear.
Yeah.
After
Right.
I did not start talking to Doug Weiss until he was divorced. We started talking, and more like friends, and then later it began to develop into something.
Yeah.
And we talked for hours, and you know I asked a million questions.
So did we.
But yes, you did. Yes, you did. And what people don't know is that I actually brought people that I trust, that I said, hey, I want you to walk with me through this. And if you see anything, I told you, Cindy, you and Darius, I said, if you see anything, it's a red flag, I want you to tell me. Same thing with you. And several other ministers, and of course my minister friend there in Tennessee. Also, my dear friend, I'm just not going to say everybody's name, but who again has been in ministry for 40 years. And we just began to walk through that process. One of the things that all of y'all said to me, you said to me, is just slow down.
Yes.
And because you need to take time, and that's what I did. And we
Well,
both
would
did.
ask
We slowed down.
questions.
Yeah.
So we would talk, and I know you would talk with probably several, but if there was ever a question about something, I was like, well, you might consider this or you might consider that. It wasn't like we were yes people, like whatever.
Because it was
you
an
wanna do.
adjustment for
It's not
all of
that
us.
way at
Yeah.
all.
Well, I mean, and that's what a lot of people say, that my friends are yes people. My friends are not yes people.
No.
Count me out with that.
Exactly.
Well, and your friends wanted to see you happy. They did not want to help
Now
you.
that
But
is
getting back to, I remember distinctively at this table, Susie was so excited about
Yeah.
you
Yes,
and Doug. I mean,
Well, she was excited, and again, she was wonderful through that process early on. She thought it was great. She was so happy for me. She knew I was happy.
And
She
did
told me,
Doug
I think
ask-
he's the perfect person for you to be with. And then in
Joni,
December,
did Doug ask Jonathan's permission?
yeah, in December,
blessing, yeah.
Doug asked Jonathan out to breakfast because he wanted to get his blessing before he proposed. And Jonathan asked him a million questions and then gave his blessing. So, I mean, everything's going along. Now, I have to say, my girls, they were still, because their father had been gone a year.
Yes.
And so, or by that time, over a year. And they were still missing him. They were still grieving, to some degree. But I knew in time they would come around because they wanted me to be happy as well.
Course.
So,
And you bought, I believe, I remember correctly, you bought a very nice custom suit for Jonathan because he was going
did.
to walk you down the aisle. and
Yes.
these are all the stories I tell you guys.
We're
So
very excited about that.
I took him to get a really nice suit. He was
Yeah.
excited about walking me down. And my granddaughter was going to be a flower girl. I bought her a
And
beautiful
she
dress.
was excited.
She was very excited.
And then what happened?
Well, I would say probably around March or April of 2023. We were going to be married in June of 2023.
Right.
Is when everything started to shift. But what happened that people don't know is that I told Susie and the kids that when I got married that I would use Doug to co-host with me. Now, Doug has a seminary degree. He's a licensed psychologist. He's been in ministry for years. And
He's a seasoned television presenter.
well, and we just had, you know, a little season of the kids hosting with me, but it wasn't Joni and one of the kids. It was always Marcus and Joni. So it was a husband and wife. And of course, they would have continued to be a part and host when I wasn't there. And
As they do now.
Yeah. So, but when Susie found out that, that's when the turn started. And then she pulled Jonathan into it, and then kind of there were rumblings with all the kids, you know, like, well, maybe mom should slow down, or maybe, you know, and it was just like a 180 from what it had been. And so I just thought, well, Lord, you know, I stayed with the counsel of you guys and of other ministers, seasoned ministers, and I knew that the Lord had brought this man into my life. I knew that I was going to get married in June. And so I just continued on. And of course, the kids did come to the wedding. My brother walked me down the aisle. Yes. And that ended up being a blessing because my dad would have done it had he been alive.
Why are Jonathan and Susie doing this? What's the reason for all this?
Well, you know, the reason is clear. They did not want someone else coming in and taking their place. But the truth is, you know, Doug didn't take anybody's place.
Right.
You know, Marcus had left strict instructions that if anything ever happened to him, that I would be president of Daystar. And a lot of people are saying, well, you know, Marcus intended for Jonathan to be the president. Marcus never intended for Jonathan to be the president while I was alive or while he was alive. He had hoped, and he used this analogy all the time. He said, when your mom and I are gone, it would be my hope that Jonathan could lead with the girls beside him. And he would use the analogy of Moses
Holding up
with
the arms.
Aaron and her holding up the arms, and he wanted the three of them to work together. He said it over and over.
I hear that, yeah.
But what happened was when Doug came into the picture, there was something underneath there that I had never seen before that came to the surface. And I was shocked because I had always had a great relationship with everybody. And so what happened was we got back from our honeymoon. It was in July. And by the way, there are questions about, it's all over the internet, that Daystar paid $100,000 for my
Yes, I
honeymoon.
was getting ready to ask you about that.
So absolutely not. Not one penny of Daystar's money was used for our honeymoon. We paid for our honeymoon, okay? So again, that's another lie that's out there.
Right.
And so, but when we got back and we're doing the program, you know, everything seemed okay, but there was a viewer comment that came in and said, hey, enjoying Dr. Doug hosting with Joni, love the song she wrote, No Fear, congratulations, something like that. And then there was another viewer feedback comment. You remember that day?
I do.
Because you were there.
Yeah.
And so the producer comes running in the middle of a live show, which again, you want continuity, and the presence of God is so important when you're doing these programs live, and you've got to be in unity. And she came running back in and she said, they refused to read the card. And I was like,
Saying
what?
that Jonathan and Susie?
Jonathan and Susie refused to read the card. And Susie, I think, threw the card and stomped off the set, they told me. And I was just like, what in the world?
They did not want to say something good about Doug? Is that what it was?
They did not want to read the viewer comment because they had done a 180 and all of a sudden decided that I was out of the will of God and that I shouldn't have married Doug, et cetera, et cetera. But that was what was so bizarre because they knew the process that I went through. They knew the people that I surrounded myself with.
Right.
And they were all for it. And Jonathan gave his blessing. Yeah. So I just said, well, cut him from the show. Because at that point, you could feel in the atmosphere.
Yes.
And that's when it all began. And if you had told me back then that they were capable of doing what they're doing right now, I would have never believed it because
You wouldn't have, that's true.
I love my son and I love Susie. I love my grandchildren. And I know more than anything, it would break the heart of Marcus Lamb. And the fact that they would even tarnish
Yes.
their dad's name, or that Jonathan would tarnish his dad's name, is just shocking
It
to
is
me.
shocking.
And
I think that's something that's broke my heart, is to see the family situation.
Yes.
It's heartbreaking as a mom, as a grandmother, and that it breaks my heart that it's been put out there for all the world to see, the pain or the things that you go through as a
well,
family.
we tried to handle it privately.
Yeah.
And we tried for restoration, we tried for resolution, we tried for mediation, and to no avail. We would get something worked out with Jonathan, and then he would go home to Susie, and then come back different. And our board saw that, and people in positions of authority would see that, and again, we were just scratching our head like, how do we fix this? Because it was such a mess. And so we met with Jimmy Evans, myself, and the two of them, and we had exhausted so many avenues of trying to work it out. And so we had a meeting. It was a private meeting. And
However, it was taped, which
Yes.
to me felt, when I heard it, the meeting was fine, but to do that secretly
Yes.
What do
and
you
make
mean
that
taped?
I
Explain.
guess recorded.
Jonathan
So it's-
secretly recorded
so
the
that
meeting.
to me is deceptive.
He knew it
You
was a
go into
private meeting, yeah.
And if I were recording, I would go into the meeting knowing what I'm saying is going to be said. So I think I would probably, in my own flesh, edit my words, maybe not
yes.
say exactly what I'm thinking, or respond the way that I would had I not been recording.
Well, he was secretly recording. Of course, we didn't know it. But I will just say on the record, I don't regret anything that I said. Because, again, we were talking about, Jimmy was trying to explain about, God's order,
Yes.
of
Authority.
submission. And when someone is called into an office as the president of a network, that if you can't submit to that authority, you remove yourself from it.
And Joni, that would be true if this was CBS, Fox News, IBM, any other corporation. You would not go in and attack the president and expect to remain in that company.
Well, then a lot of people talk about the voice of God analogy that was
Right,
used,
yes.
because
Yes, that's what I wanted to know.
yeah, the voice of God. I am not.
Since when you became the voice of God?
I am not the voice of God.
Please.
But what Jimmy was saying is that I am the voice of authority
Yes.
at Daystar.
Yes.
He wasn't saying I was the voice of God.
Yeah.
Okay. And anybody in ministry
Would understand that.
understand that. And I've had hundreds of people tell me, I was thinking this, but I listened to the tape and I'm like, wow, I see exactly what went on there. But of course, what he meant was I was the voice of authority here.
You've always operated with such humility. So when I heard, the voice of God, I'm like, I've never seen that about you.
No.
I mean, honestly, you've operated with such humility. And so it was shocking. So I'm glad you clarified that.
Well, and I never thought I would be here. I really thought Marcus would live another 20, 25 years.
Of course.
And so that was the most difficult storm I ever went through, was losing him. And I would say that what I'm going through right now is the second most difficult storm, because there's nothing that pulls at your heartstrings more
As a mother.
than your own child.
Yes.
And I believe God will turn that around. I don't know how, when, where. There's so much damage that's been done. But the fact that I'm even having to talk about this publicly.
Exactly.
You
But
know, I
Joni,
know
it
there's.
doesn't have God licked. He is still in control here.
I think Cindy mentioned at one point that no family is perfect, and no family is perfect.
Right.
But what I know for sure is that you've always loved your family. I mean, you've always considered your daughter-in-laws as daughters. I mean,
Daughters in love.
I mean, I was shocked to hear that all this had been happening, because you never ever talked bad about anything about your family. I mean, we've been on walks, we've been out, we've done. I was just so shocked, and I understand why the world is so shocked by all this, because here I come, every week, and I didn't know anything that was going on as far as all the details and everything that's out there. And you know what? I don't want to know all those details because I have lived a life. I've lived a very public life. Ex-husband, 3 Super Bowl wins. You know, I've been in media. I've been in all that. There's nothing good that comes from it.
Yeah.
You know, and so I just, you know, continue to pray that, you know, this could have been worked out privately instead of publicly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And what we have all said to people is we know the character of Joni Lamb. We know her character. We know her ability to love. But while we're
But
talking...
Joni Lamb is not perfect. Let's make sure
Of
we make
course
it.
not.
Certainly not perfect.
Not perfect, but
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
But parts of her own.
And you would not, I know you in your heart would not want to have to address this in this manner, that you're having to respond.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, you know,
one
It's out
side,
there.
Proverbs 18 talks about that one side seems right until you hear the other side.
Right. Sure.
And I just keep,
you know, when I hear things
Encouraging
like,
people
you
to
know, she
hear.
covered things up, or she
Yes.
hurt her granddaughter, or she didn't stand, like, that is the part that just tears at my heart because it's not true.
Exactly.
Or when things are being said about Marcus, that he covered things up and he's not here to defend himself. And I can tell you, Marcus Lamb would never cover up anything, and he adored his granddaughter.
Absolutely.
He would have done anything to protect her. He knew about the 2020 incident. He knew I went to the school. And this other incident is a totally separate incident that has been given a narrative that is completely false.
So, Joni, what's up with this NDA whole thing? What is that all about?
Well, an NDA is something that Marcus started that process. He actually talked to an attorney friend about writing something up because Daystar had gotten so big and there was, you know, business and proprietary information that you want to keep private.
And NDA stands for non-disclosure
Agreement, right.
So for those who
But
might
you
not
have to
know.
understand that they're saying that we were trying to get him to sign an NDA so that they wouldn't share this information that we didn't want to share. That's a complete lie. There was no information to share. And you can share any kind of information that is wrong. I mean, you work in HR.
Right.
If there's some kind of sexual abuse or something.
Absolutely.
And so the NDA was for business reasons, and Marcus has started that process, and I just carried it on through.
Because there were
that's
other.
not uncommon, is it, to sign?
HR.
No, I mean, it just depends on the organization. But one thing that I truly was that got my attention, it was about a PIP. So did you fire Jonathan without putting him on a performance plan?
No.
Because that sounded, when I heard about that, and I think a friend of mine just texted, it just sounded really, really cold and harsh. Like, did you fire him without saying, okay, a performance improvement plan, we'll lay everything out, we want you here, this is what we expect of you, et cetera?
Well, what happened is I came back and with a team of people, and we met with every employee. And I had Doug in the meeting with me because we wanted to solidify the fact that I'm president of Daystar, that he's not in any capacity of leading Daystar or on the board or anything else. He's
Or
here
trying to.
he co-hosts with me on TV. He's an incredible blessing to me. He has his own business that still operates an amazing counseling center in Colorado Springs. And so Arnold, who used to be over the prayer department, I told him, you need to go find out what's going on. And so
And Arnold is, what is his title?
he's the COO.
Okay.
And so he went into the prayer department and found out a lot of stuff that was going on. And we actually removed those departments from Jonathan's leadership because he was not managing them properly. We found out that there were department heads that came to him and said, this is going on, please deal with this. And Jonathan didn't believe it and didn't deal with it. I lost some really good prayer partners and leaders in the prayer department. So we knew, and Arnold just told me, we've got to move him from over the prayer department and these other. And so we put all of that back in order. And so once I found out that this was going on, I called these prayer partners that I lost. And they said, we'll come back. They all came back, and they're still there. And so it was tough, to make those decisions, but it was for the betterment of Daystar. And the leadership
Those
here.
were the departments that Jonathan was over?
Right. He was over several departments. Those were 3 that he was over that we removed to get him back in order. And so we met and decided we would put Jonathan on a PIP agreement, which that's a performance improvement plan. You work in HR, so you know about that.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so we laid out specific, this is what you need to do to improve, and just the managerial style and making the right decision. You got 300 employees. Obviously I can't micromanage every employee, but everyone knows here that I care about our employees, and
That's true.
they need to be treated, with dignity. And so, because
That
you
is
work
true.
here.
Yeah, that's true.
So we put him on that the PIP, and we had someone that was over him that kept up with his hours. He would come in and they'd be gone for 3-hour lunches, wouldn't tell anybody where he was, didn't really meet with the departments that he was over, and he just completely did not perform at all. And a little did I know that there was something else up where they were plotting and planning something to try to hurt me, to try to hurt Daystar, which again is shocking. I would have never thought that would have happened.
Right.
Yeah, can I ask though about back to the NDA? Were there other employees that did the NDA as well here?
Oh yeah, all the department heads, the family
Okay.
that would have knowledge of business.
It wasn't just him; it was
Oh,
other
no,
people's over.
including me. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
We
so-
did that with our business, so it's very common practice.
Yeah. So how long was it before, apparently now that I'm aware and have gained so much knowledge, there's a timeline involved. I mean, was he fired a year ago? I mean, how long was he employed before he was fired? Or what's the date that he was actually fired or received the PIP?
Well, he was on, I don't remember if it was a 6-month or a 9-month PIP agreement. And that was up on November the 15th.
Okay.
And I had been advised before then that we needed to go ahead and let him go, but I said, no, let's just wait, let's see. I kept hoping things could change.
Right.
And so when it was up, that's when this blogger came forth with questions, questioning our integrity, talking about a cover-up and sexual abuse and all this crazy stuff. And that's when we let him go.
Okay.
But it was because the PIP agreement was up and he had failed miserably. So he'll try to say, well, because this blogger, had questions, then y'all let me go. No, they admitted they had been working with her for months.
Well, and Joni, how about the fact that he's now said that he was supposed to be president and has made an issue of that on some of these
It's just like I
blogs?
said earlier, Marcus never intended for him to be president while I was alive. And we had conversations, Marcus and I did, and he told me, our kids are not ready. And if anything were to happen to me, and I said, nothing is going to happen to you. And he said, but if it did, if I passed before you, you would have to run Daystar. And he actually followed up with an email and sent to the board and all the family exactly, what would happen if he ever, if he went to be with the Lord before me. But I never dreamed in a million years that he would.
We did, yes.
You
None
know,
of us did.
when I look around the table, I see we're all mothers, we're all grandmothers.
Yes.
You're a daughter, you're a wife, you're a mother-in-law. I mean, you're so many things to so many people, but you're human. And I understand that. I understand and I know what pain, we all know what pain feels
Yes.
like.
Yeah.
But how are you handling all this?
I mean, it's been difficult. I put my happy face on and come to work. But yeah, I go home and and there are tears. There are moments I'm really sad because I love my son.
Yeah.
I love my daughter-in-law. I love my grandkids. They put me in an impossible situation. And I'm just sorry that we even have to sit here and talk about this.
Too, but I do want to say thank you. Thank you for letting us have this time with you. No, it's not easy, but thank you as
Yes.
friends and besties that love you and appreciate you.
Well, thank you. And you knew a lot of the story because we had many early
Coffees.
morning coffee talk. And Cindy, you as well.
We are praying for your entire family, for Daystar.
Yes.
That
Yes.
the truth will prevail.
Amen.
I know that God is
Yeah.
fighting this battle for you. Our battle is not against flesh and blood.
Right.
And we're praying for Jonathan and Susie and their
absolutely
family
we are.
because
Of course.
I know how much you love them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And our heart would be restoration.
Well, you know, and
And
two,
it
you've
sees your
you've got family members involved here, and
Yes.
when I know that someone is innocent and is being accused, it's a horrible thing. And at the same time, I've got a granddaughter that I adore. But again, if you don't know the whole story,
Exactly.
you can't understand the dynamics here. So hopefully, at least I appreciate you asking me these hard questions, and hopefully this can help.